To start this one.
Charles Leclerc out before it even begins. That is how treacherous it is, even at reduced conditions. We go on board with the driver from Monaco, who is about to find the barrier in a straight line, and that's aquaplaning to the wall.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely zippo he can do there. That's the danger. I literally said it was a sensible decision to go on inters, but look at the rain coming down in that moment, and Charles turning to the left, but the tyres are just skimming.
Was Charles Leclerc's accident in Miami pure bad luck, or the clearest show that Ferrari has not yet learned to run in the rain? Stay, because today we are going to disassemble piece by piece everything that happened with the SF25, and you will not believe what we discover. The day of Saturday, May 3, 2025 seemed to be aimed at a new opportunity for Charles Leclerc to reaffirm his role as Ferrari banner in the season. However, fate had a completely different script prepared. It all started even before the traffic lights went out. The morning had witnessed an unexpected storm that left Miami's track in highly compromised conditions. It was not a simple drizzle. It was a tropical, dense, warm rain with a volume of water such that the drainage of the circuit, although functional, could not avoid the formation of extensive areas of puddles and layers of surface water. In spite of this, the protocol continued its course and the cars began the form of formation. Leclerc came out from the 6th position for the sprint race, and since he crossed the boxes line to integrate to the track, the first signs of discomfort were evident. The visibility was reduced by the spray generated by the cars that preceded it, and the grip was practically null. Instead of concentrating on the temperature of the tires or in the behavior of the car, Charles found himself in a constant alert state, simply struggling to maintain control of the SF25. When it reached the rear straight, a normally safe sector to refine sensations before the start, the car suddenly reacted. Aquaplaning was total. Although it was at formation speed, the car slipped as if it were on ice. The tires could not move the water, and the SF25 stopped obeying. Leclerc tried to correct with smooth steering wheel movements and brake modulation, but it was too late. The Ferrari became an uncontrolled passenger. The scene developed in seconds, but for those who observed it in real time, and especially for Leclerc, he must have felt as an eternity. The car hit the rear wall of the circuit with a dry, strong blow, which immediately revealed the magnitude of the damage. Onboard cameras captured the pilot's face at the time of impact. Open eyes, tense jaw, and then an expression of absolute resignation. After the impact, the SF25 was battered. The right back was completely compromised. Shattered suspension, parts of the started diffuser, and fragments of the body that spread along the track. Despite this, Leclerc kept the car running for a few more seconds. In that brief period, the consequences of the accident were amplified. The loose pieces spread dangerously in the trajectory of other cars. Some even hit circuit structures, including a bridge on the track, which lit the alarms of the race direction. The FIA soon opened an investigation, not because of the accident itself, but for the decision to continue with a clearly damaged car and in insecure conditions. While the commissioners analyzed the situation, the international transmission captured the radio communication between Leclerc and its engineer. A phrase was recorded in the environment: "Why am I so damn unfortunate?" That question, thrown into the air with a mixture of helplessness, sadness, and anger, summarizes years of frustration contained. It was not the first time that Leclerc saw how an opportunity vanished by factors that escaped their control. But this time, the context was even more cruel. There were no piloting errors or risky maneuvers. Only a car that could not cope with a track that demanded more than the SF25 could offer. At that time, the entire paddock was silent. The accident not only marked the absence of Leclerc in the sprint, but also represented a crack in the team's confidence and an alert signal on Ferrari's technical preparation to face extreme climatic conditions. What seemed like a simple round of training became a painful lesson on how an instant can change the course of a weekend or a whole season. When an accident is analyzed in Formula One, the easiest thing is to look only at the pilot. But in the case of Charles Leclerc in Miami, focusing the attention only on it would be not to see the forest for looking at a tree. Behind that violent impact was a chain of strategic and technical decisions that committed not only the performance of the car, but also the security of the pilot. The true epicenter of the problem was a decision as simple as transcendental: the tires chosen to go on track. Ferrari chose to mount intermediate tires in the SF25 of Leclerc, despite the fact that the track had more typical conditions of a monsoon than of a light rain. The logic behind this choice, according to some sources of the paddock, was based on the forecast that the rains would cease in minutes and that the track would begin to dry quickly. In theory, that would have given a competitive advantage by not having to change intermediates later. But in practice, that decision was catastrophic. Because not only the rain persisted more than expected, but also the environmental humidity and urban design of the Miami circuit prevented any effective drainage in the critical areas of the layout. The direct consequence was the total loss of adhesion in key sectors, particularly in long lines where cars reach high speed without significant aerodynamic support. In these circumstances, the intermediate tire does not have the ability to evacuate enough water, generating the dreaded aquaplane condition. And that was exactly what Leclerc suffered. The SF25 slipped on the water layer as if he had no contact with the soil, something that in technical terms represents a total failure in the choice of the compound for the present conditions. But the strategic error does not end in tires. There is another much deeper problem layer: car configuration. From the preseason tests, it is known that the SF25 has been designed to exploit the maximum performance in dry track conditions. Its aerodynamic approach is oriented to maximize the efficiency of air flow on the car surfaces, something that works exceptionally well in technical paths with good asphalt. However, that same design makes it vulnerable in low grip situations, especially when the floor is wet. Ferrari has worked intensely on the rear stability of the SF25, knowing that this was one of its Achilles heels in 2024. But that work focused on controlled conditions, not in situations of extreme climate. What is dry is an advantage, what becomes a threat. Leclerc, losing control of the car, had no tools inside the car to correct the trajectory. And this is key. It was not only a pneumatic error, but a structural failure in the tuning of the car for changing conditions. In addition, the moment in which everything happened, during the training return, adds another level of severity to the analysis. That return is not just a procedure. It is the first real thermometer of the circuit conditions. Many pilots take advantage of those meters to read the track and, if necessary, ask for a change of strategy. But in this case, neither the team nor the pilot seemed to consider the last-minute adjustment. Unlike other teams that did re-evaluate their strategy to see the real conditions of the track, Ferrari maintained the original plan. An attitude that, in retrospect, reveals a worrying disconnection between the information on the track and the decision-making on the wall. He even listened to Lewis Hamilton, a teammate of Leclerc, question the decision of the team to go out with intermediates. "How is it possible to send us with intermediates?" he asked, incredulous, while the car was barely kept in a straight line. If two pilots with combined decades of experience feel insecure with the choice, why did the team not react? These types of errors not only affect the classification of a pilot or the result of a career, they erode confidence within the team. A pilot needs to know that when he goes on track, the car that is underneath has been prepared with surgical precision to face each circumstance. Leclerc did not have that certainty in Miami. And when a pilot doubts the car, he begins to doubt everything else. Thus, the SF25 accident becomes much more than a career anecdote. It is a symptom. A symptom that Ferrari, despite its aerodynamic advances and having one of the best pilots in the grill, continues to make mistakes that should no longer happen to this level. And in a championship as tight as that of 2025, a single strategic error can be the difference between aspiring to the title or be out of the fight early. Charles Leclerc's accident in Miami cannot be interpreted as an isolated event or a simple consequence of chance. This incident is a deep reflection of the structural problems that are still latent in Ferrari, despite the obvious advances that the team has shown in recent years. What happened in the sprint race return is just the tip of the iceberg of a broader set of strategic inconsistencies, technical limitations, and above all, a silent crisis of internal trust. Internally, this type of failures generates an emotional fracture between pilot and team. Charles Leclerc is not a rookie. He is a pilot who has shown unwavering loyalty to Ferrari in the midst of complicated years. But the phrase he launched on the radio after the accident, "Why am I so damn unfortunate?" should not be taken as a simple expression of frustration. It is a statement full of accumulated tiredness, of unique wounds, of a pilot who has crashed into the limits of what Ferrari can offer him as a competitive structure. The risk here is not just losing points, it is losing Leclerc emotionally. And when a pilot loses faith in his team, the deterioration of the relationship becomes almost inevitable. From the technical perspective, the accident shows that the development of the SF25 is not completely optimized for extreme conditions. This is critical because modern Formula One seasons do not win only with pure speed, they win versatility. Champions' cars are those that work dry, wet, cold, heat in urban or permanent circuits. The fact that the SF25 has behaved as an unstable machine before a dense rain scenario calls into question its true ability to adapt to calendar challenges. And this calendar, in addition, is one of the most extensive and diverse in the history of the category. On the other hand, the accident also compromises the internal balance of the team. Lewis Hamilton, who has had a mixed start of the season, is in the process of adapting to the Ferrari environment. But unlike Leclerc, it does not load with the emotional weight of the previous failures of the team. His gaze is colder, more pragmatic. If Hamilton perceives that the structural weaknesses of the team are not corrected, they could distance themselves from the project silently, prioritizing its personal performance on the collective. In this context, the pressure for Frédéric Vasseur and his technical team could not be greater, because it's not just about saving a season. It's about preventing Ferrari from losing once again his fundamental pillars. In addition, there is a key strategic element at stake: external perception. Ferrari is more than a Formula Team 1. It is a historical institution whose reputation transcends sport. Each error, each operational failure, every bad decision is amplified by a global community of followers and by constant media pressure. What for another team could have been an operational stumbling block, for Ferrari it becomes a collapse narrative. And that narrative, if it is not controlled with forceful results, becomes a slab that prevents any real progress. In this scenario, Ferrari's future in the 2025 season is marked by a crossroads. They have a competitive car, although clearly imperfect. They have an elite pilots, but also with delicate internal dynamics. They have resources, history, and motivation, but continue to drag execution errors that move them away from excellence. What happens from now on will depend on the team's ability to react firmly, to correct quickly, to demonstrate that this accident does not define the year, but promotes it towards a necessary transformation. And as for Leclerc, what is at stake is much more than its position in the championship. It is his legacy within Ferrari. If the team does not give you the environment you need to compete with freedom, consistency, and trust, the link that seemed unbreakable could begin to fray. Because even the most faithful pilot needs results. And Charles Leclerc has waited too much time. What happened with Charles Leclerc in Miami should not only leave a brand in the FIA incident reports. It has to cause a turning point. Formula One, in its current state, does not grant margin to prolonged error. Every thousandth of the second, each poorly negotiated curve, each poorly calculated strategy can make the difference between lifting a trophy or returning to the empty-handed paddock. In this ruthless ecosystem, Ferrari has shown once again that he still drags ghosts from the past. They are not just isolated operational errors, they are repeated patterns. And that, for a team with its history, should be unacceptable. We are talking about one of the most iconic car structures, one that has been the protagonist of the most glorious pages of this sport. But that prestige is not enough if it is not accompanied by an execution at the height. And that is where the inevitable question arises. Can Ferrari continue to pretend to compete for championships if he does not learn to manage critical situations with surgical precision? Because if you can't protect your pilot in a simple training turn, how are you going to protect your season in the 24 most demanding calendar? Charles Leclerc does not need pity. He needs a car that is at the height of his talent. And Ferrari does not need only speed. It needs operational reliability, strategic intelligence, and a real connection between the wall and the track. The Miami accident must be the starting point for deep rethinking. It is not enough to repair the SF25. We must repair decision-making, we must rebuild trust, we must redefine what it means to be Ferrari in 2025. And now, I want to leave the conversation open to you. Do you think this was just an unfortunate incident or a clear sign that Ferrari has not learned from his mistakes? Is Leclerc condemned to relive the same cycle of frustrations year after year? Or there is still hope that the team reacted and gives it a car worthy of its capacity? Leave it in the comments. This channel is not just to see what happens. It is to understand why it happens and what could happen later. If you value this type of content, consider subscribing and activates the notification bell. We will continue to cover everything that is not seen with the naked eye in the F1, from the technical analysis to the most political decisions of the paddock.